Vibrant Living is brought to you by Springwater Insurance Group, teaching you how to buy the best Medicare and supplemental plans for your needs.
Welcome to another edition of Vibrant Living. My name is Darrell Dickeson, and I'm a board member of the Wenatchee Valley Senior Activity Center. I'm substituting this week for Dave Tosch, our executive director, who hopefully is experiencing a little southern sun in Arizona this week. So Dave will be back again shortly. But we have a very exciting guest today that I'm very happy to welcome, Dr. Julie Rickard, who is with us, and I'm going to let her start by telling us just a little bit about yourself, Julie, and what is it that you do?
All right. So I am the founder of the Suicide Prevention Coalition, and I also run the Suicide Prevention, moment-by-moment suicide prevention, which is doing online trainings, and then I coach and do presentations around suicide prevention. So I'm all things suicide prevention. So my work with seniors has been really working with senior centers and working with different organizations to create pathways of care around suicide prevention.
So do you work with all age groups, or?
Yep, I am working. I currently have a project with the schools in Wenatchee, and I'm hoping to expand out to East Wenatchee and into Chelan. So my goal is to work with any age group that has people that might be struggling, or organizations that need training or other things around suicide prevention.
So suicide is a topic that I'm sure most people don't want to talk about, yeah. But give us a little bit of a sense of how big of an issue or a problem is it?
Yeah, so when I started, I founded the coalition back in 2012, and at that point, 32,000 people died in the United States by suicide. We're currently up to around 48,000 people. Locally, the year I founded it was because we had 30 suicides that year, and 11 of them were youth. And so predominantly that year we had a lot of youth, but we also had a lot of seniors. And since that time, I worked collecting the data, trying to figure out how do we best reach out to different groups. And seniors have every year, except for this year, been on the radar as one of the highest groups.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that it's okay or not unnatural to be depressed on occasion, whatever age you are.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is hope. It is treatable.
Absolutely, there's hope. And I think depression is very treatable. And I think we just have to get in front of the people that can help us treat it. And oftentimes what happens is people that are depressed don't advocate for themselves. They also experience memory issues. So oftentimes one of the first symptoms of a depression is a lack of good memory, right? So you lose your memory at the beginning of depression, and it doesn't return until depression's over. And so what happens is these people are like, oh, I must be getting demented, or something's wrong with me. And really it's a depression where it's gone unrecognized. And so it's important to just get the questions answered, ask and push for the help that people might need outside of the other complicated medical issues that are happening. I think the other piece that's super important is asking if they're suicidal. Are you having thoughts of suicide? Are you wishing you were dead? Or are you wishing to go to sleep and not wake up? Those are very good questions. And I think the fear that I hear from people is, if I ask those questions, will I make it happen? And the truth is you won't make it happen. There's been lots of research around this. You're not implanting thoughts. What you're going to do is, if someone is actually having those thoughts, it relieves them to say, oh, I can't believe you asked that, and you're willing to talk to me about it. And then just having that fear answered, and have someone say, you know what, it's treatable. Let's get you help. This is probably depression. And then getting them to a primary care provider or a mental health provider that can help them kind of with the next steps. And I think having family, having friends, or having a professional ask those direct questions, you're going to find that that person feels relieved and not angry, upset, or anything else. You haven't created a problem. You've actually solved a problem.
Great. So if someone were feeling like they might be a subject of depression and potential suicidal thoughts, what would you recommend as a process? Do you have a checklist of things that people go over to help identify, or how does that work, and who should people contact?
Well, I think the first thing is that if family believes, or someone that cares about someone is depressed or struggling with suicide, I think asking the question directly. Once you get a positive, then it's really saying, well, who's your primary care provider? And then getting to the primary care provider, because if they don't have a mental health provider, the primary care will help connect them directly. The majority of the primary care practices in our region now have a mental health provider that's directly connected with the primary care, so they can see someone same day if they need to and get an assessment, get next steps already happening. Sleep deprivation is a big contributor, so if someone's sleep is not kind of occurring regularly or at the level that they're used to, what you see is cognitive changes. And so making sure that someone knows what it is that they should be advocating for. If you know that your loved one is up and down all night and not getting good sleep, then making sure that they're getting something that will help them sleep and address that, and then seeing if we manage the sleep, does this other stuff start to improve? And I think helping us get there. I think for seniors, what most people don't know is there's a thing called the Friendship Line. And the Friendship Line is out of the Institute of Aging. It's a national line that was created to help seniors that maybe need someone to talk to, that feel lonely, that don't have someone checking in on them, or maybe family can't be there all the time. And so what it does is it helps families with another person that's calling and saying, hey, how are you? What do you need? Is there anything that we want to talk about today? And they will actually schedule times to talk with the people. They actually create relationships with them if that's something that the person wants. And I highly recommend it, and it's something that I push to a lot of my seniors that are feeling like, I'm not able to get out as much, what can I do? And now that we have a pandemic, it's a perfect time to utilize a line like that where they can get the extra support that can help bolster the family support as well.
Great. Do you happen to know the number of that line off the top of your head?
So you're challenging me. So it's 800-971-0016.
Great. And I assume this is all confidential?
Yep. It's a warm line, so it also helps with if the person's in crisis, they will help them manage that crisis. So you can be suicidal and call that, and then they will also use it like a crisis line. But they call it a warm line, so it's actually someone that they can talk to, and then repeatedly they will work with them.
Dr. Rickard, I really appreciate you coming by today and sharing this very valuable information. Do you have any information about how to contact you or any other specific agencies that you'd like to share? Yeah,
so I have a website. It's Moment by Moment Suicide Prevention. So it's www.mbmsp.net. And so it's just the acronym for Moment by Moment Suicide Prevention. Or you can contact me at my phone number. So it's 509-881-4059, which is my office number. And that will get any questions. I'm happy to answer questions that people might have. Through the coalition, I'm a resource for other agencies or individuals that have people that are struggling or don't really know what to do or need an evaluation and aren't sure how to go about getting that. And I'm happy to balance any questions that families might have.
Hi, I'm Jim Heinlein, and previously I discussed with you the two ways you can have your Medicare. But now I want to focus in on just the Medicare A and B when run by federal employees. So Medicare A, it's called inpatient hospital, and it covers hospital, home care, hospice, and skilled nursing. Now Medicare B deals with professional services like doctors, clinics, specialists, ambulance, crutches, and all those items. But with A and B of Medicare, what's important to know is Medicare A and B does not have a MOOP. You're probably, what's a MOOP? That's max out of pocket. An example to help you understand that is like having a car with no brakes. It doesn't stop. So A and B never stops asking you to pay the unpaid portion. You'll pay it. And that's a concern. So how do we solve the missing MOOP of Medicare A and B? We get a Medigap supplement. And I'm going to discuss that more in our next commercial. So if you have questions about your Medicare A and B, give us a call at Springwater Insurance Group. Our number is 888-2600.
We'll be making 12 stops today. Some have our husband and wife, so there's 2 meals. The people have a choice of side dishes, either a salad or soup, and then a dessert. And they're very conscious of your desires. If there's something you don't like, they note that. If you're diabetic, they note that. So it's very specific to the person. Monday, Wednesday, Friday are a little bit heavier than a Tuesday and a Thursday. You could dictate if you want it 5 days a week, 2 days a week, whatever fits your schedule. Some people on the list will put notations, do not ring the doorbell, leave the meal in a cooler. They're new, so I'm not sure what their story is. I think this is important for people that are not able to cook for themselves, and the meals are very balanced. It's hospital food, so it's not gourmet, but it's certainly hot. It's a hot meal, and a lot of people tell me it's enough food where they will only eat half of it for lunch and save the other half for dinner. So it really suits their needs. Nice, hot, balanced lunch, and they get to make eye contact with someone. There are quite a few of these people. I may be the only person they see all day. So before COVID, we made sure to make eye contact, generate some small talk, the weather, what's going on, make sure they're okay, they don't need anything. It's a great service. People are very nice and very appreciative because they know that we're all volunteers. We don't get paid. We're just doing it because someday we may be in need of a meal, and hopefully somebody will volunteer to bring it. How's everything?
Everything is great.
Yeah?
Everything is wonderful. We had a great weekend.
Because I know the route so well, I usually do it just by myself. It just saves time. But a lot of the gals go with a girlfriend or something, and then they go out to lunch afterwards, Because really, you're only committed to 1 day a month, so you can just make it a fun day. Go to lunch, and it's really not a big commitment at all. I deliver 3 days a month right now, and then I'm always open to subbing. If a person can't do their route, they'll call around. We have a phone list of everybody's phone number, and we'll call around and see who can take the route that day, and then you make arrangements to take their route the next time. So, works out really well. I've lived in the area 6 years. We moved up here, my daughter moved up and had been here 2 years, and we came to visit and really loved the area. So I just love it up here. It's great for retirement. I had a grandkid with me. He would go, he bought these little candy bars. He would have me go grab a bunch of candy bars to give to my grandson. And he had tomato plants. He would tell me to go pick tomato plants and take them home. I mean, he just a lovely older man. He's since passed away, but just always upbeat, just never complained about anything. Sometimes it's hard if people don't have their street numbers visible, you sort of are hunting for the right house, but it gets me right to the area. And I have delivered to the wrong house. And so the people will call up Trish and say, why didn't I get my meal today? And then she'll call me and say, why didn't you deliver it? And I say, I did. And come to find out it was the wrong street or something. So I go back and get it. before they eat it. So that has happened. We delivered to 12 stops, but I think 14 meals because some are doubles. But very easy, and instructions are, they give you street by street directions of how to get to the house. So it's very easy, not a hard job at all. Very rewarding.
Hello, I'm Dave Tosch, Executive Director, Wenatchee Valley Senior Activity Center. And today I have Thomas Sandoval here with me. And Thomas is an interesting story. He's a great guy, for one thing, and we've become friends over the years. I've been here a little over 7 years, and I think I met Thomas soon after I arrived. And we got to talking one day, and I learned a lot about Thomas and what he's done in our community.
I'll do my apology up front. I was born in Wyoming, and my folks moved to Washington State when I was 6 months old. So even though I was not born in this state, I was raised in this state and spent my whole life in our state. I grew up in Pasco, Washington, which is down the road from here. Gosh, 80, 100 miles away, that kind of thing. When I grew up back in the 50s and 60s, times were different and our communities were different. And in the town I grew up in Pasco, they were literally segregated sections. Almost what you think of when you think of the Deep South and somebody says we have whites only and blacks only kind of signs and where you could drink and water and what restaurants you can go in. That was how life was in Pasco when I grew up. Oddly enough, I went to a parochial school. My brothers and sisters and I were the only persons of color in our school. Went all the way through the 9th grade, and that's when our school ended, and we moved on to the high school. And I learned at that time that I couldn't go further in my education because it wasn't permitted back in those good old days. And oddly enough, in our state, they passed nationally bills in 64 and 65, the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And I went to high school in 1965, a year that the Voting Rights Act was passed. And my high school years, 66 through 68, 65 through 68, I was in school, and we were just beginning as a community and as a school to adjust to those changes. So the first year that Washington State had actually put some dollars aside to the state legislature to allow them to recruit minorities to go to college for the first time in the history of our state. And Washington State University started in 1861. It was reset up in 1890 when Washington became a state in 1889. And the first year of minority recruitment was in 1968, 70, 80 years after we became a state. In that first year of recruitment, I was the person, along with 35 other Latinos, that were recruited to go to school at the U, 200 black students and 8 American Indians. Of the 35 Latinos that went, 5 of them were women, and my wife, who was not my wife then, was one of those 5 women that were able to convince her parents to allow them to go to school. So I met her at school. We eventually married, and that became part of that history, and I've been married since then, so we're just going to celebrate our 50th year in retirement.
Congratulations.
In marriage. Well, you can either say I've swept her off her feet, or she's trying to continue to change me for the last 50 years, and she's working well at it. But outside of that, I grew up in the state, and as I said, I went to the west side to go to school at the University of Washington. I graduated from Evergreen State College a number of years later. But I ended up getting a job in Seattle in a nonprofit organization, community-based agency. And my boss got believe it or not, misused federal funds and got arrested and went to jail. And so they literally picked from the staff and said, somebody has to run this program. So at 22, I became the director of this $1 million organization and 18 staff, and kind of got thrusted into that moment. My parents, my father was in the service, World War II, was a veteran, was in the Air Force, and was in the South Pacific. Went through all of those kind of things and survived the war, came back, married my mother, and eventually wanted to move to Washington State because they couldn't find employment where they were at. And employment is a major portion of a lot of people's dignity, and it especially is for Latinos. So my folks were trying to come to Washington State because of that. When they came to Washington, and my folks got a job, and one of the things that my parents looked forward to doing is to say that they wanted their children to have a better life than what they had. So they were looking forward to my brothers and sisters and I, the three of us, to have a better future, and never thinking that college was even an opportunity. And that turned out to be, in my case, one of those end results. When I look at it today as a 70-year-old man, and I think of my children, and I have a son and a daughter. My daughter is just graduating now from college with honors, and she's wanting to go right into a master's program. My son already has graduated from college and has his master's already, and he's talking about going back for his PhD. And you look at that and you say, wow, what happened in just one generation of time and how much things have changed gets to tell us about a lot of how America is today. When I was growing up, as a matter of fact, when I first came to Wenatchee, I couldn't eat in some restaurants, believe it or not, and that was in 2003. Later on, when my daughter had moved to Spokane, after her husband had passed away from war injuries in Iraq, I went to visit her and bring her some furniture, and she took me out to dinner or lunch, and they wouldn't serve us at a restaurant in Spokane. I think that was about 2009, and you look at that and you're like, wow. I remember in the 1980s when I was on an assignment for the governor's office to look at public land in Grandview, just down the road from here, and I couldn't eat at a restaurant in Ellensburg. And when you get these moments that are really a slap in the face, when you're told you can't eat in a place where everybody else eats at. I seen that when I was growing up. I witnessed that as an adult here in Wenatchee. And you look at it and you say, I'm hoping that life has changed enough so that my daughter can have a different life and an improved life, and my son can be in that same moment. We'll go through the same hard knocks of everybody else, getting laid off, getting reemployed.
Tomas, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been really enlightening, I think, for not only me, but our audience listening today. You've got an interesting perspective on things for a lot of reasons. And once we get reopened again, I want you to come down here and I'll buy you a free cup of coffee, okay? No cream or sugar, just black, but you know, that's how we operate here.
That's how you roll.
Okay.
I'll be more than happy to
right.
accept.
Thank you,
appreciate
Tomas.
it.
Thank you.